Hello. Okay, I'm just gonna make a video about I know I'm a nerd. Quick video about my Yu-Gi-Oh! G-Next deck.
Welcome to Primer Time. Primer Time is essentially going to be a deck tech or video primer about decks as I create them, as I perform with them. This one is one I'm really excited to do because it is going to be over my Smoke and Ash, or the Druid deck that I took to Houston and ended up winning with. That video at the beginning was a video probably 20 years ago almost, where I was doing a video deck tech on a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. So we've come a long way, but I'm excited to get into the deck and go over some synergies and provide some insight of how I landed where I did. So just to start out, we've got our aura packages. We've got the Great Famine and the Black Plague. I think if you're in fire and air, you should consider running these unless you're super low to the ground. Even then, these prove to be such effective removal, tempo shifts. They deal with root spiders. So not only are they good in a control list, they are good in a mid, especially good in a mid-range list, but in an aggro list as well. You can really justify running these. Particularly air has a void in, no pun intended, in hard removal. So where you might run, Chaos Twisters or Banishments, now you can run the Black Plague as a more reasonable option. Now we're getting into our artifacts. To start us off, to no surprise, the Ring of Morrigan. Not much to say about that card. It's just overpowered, especially in conjunction with Taurus Hammer Trinkets. I'm only on 2 Taurus Hammer Trinkets, primarily because I am running air and I have access to Highland Princess. I felt the redundancy of a third would be too high, but I could honestly argue to put a third in there. The card is just that strong. And then we've got our Grim Grisarms. And Grim Grisarm is a card that I was really bouncing back and forth between Grim Grisarm or Mask of Mayhem. I think Mask of Mayhem is a better card overall, but the difference in mana from 3 to 4, especially in a list like this where I am playing more of a mid-range game, did matter. Where on turn 6 I could, if I stuck a Phoenix, I could Grim Grapple it immediately on that following turn, and it felt really impactful. Or on turn 7, flip into Bruin, give it a Grim Grisarm, and grapple shot it for 8 out of nowhere. So I stuck with Grim Grisarm, but again, I do stand by Mask being a better card. Finally, in our artifacts, we've got a single copy of Drums of Doom. This is a meta call. If you're going against a lot of Archimagos or Enchantress control lists, this probably is a card you can take out maybe for that. Next, we've got our minion package, starting out with Highland Princess. Highland Princess is in there to fetch Trinket and Ring. The deck did start out with cores, but we swapped those out because of swap. We've got Violamps, we've got Cores from Kobolds, we've got Colicky Dragonet, Monstrous Lion, and finally Petrosian Cavalries. Saracen Raiders. Looking at the low end on this deck, it looks essentially like a mono fire aggro list. And that is because after doing a lot of testing, I found if I wanted to play any kind of mid-range game, I needed to fight fire with fire, quite literally, in the sense that the most effective cards that dealt with the aggression were the fire cards. Desert plus Violent kills a Redcap Powery. Desert Tawny plus Trinket Core some Kobolds kills a 4-power minion. So all of these were hyper efficient at kind of taking the foot off the gas, or taking your opponent's foot off the gas, or your opponent's foot off your neck in a lot of cases, to where you got to go into that 5th turn or 6th turn with essentially a clear board to where now you can stick your bigger minion and start to swing the tempo back in your favor. As far as synergy, for instance, Monstrous Lion was a late addition to this because it's really terrible into the control matchup, and this deck already had a hard time into control. But I felt the Monstrous Lion did such an effective job about clearing early threats and sticking around, and was also a really good target with grapple shot that it really shined over the weekend, especially into Hot Springs and to Mono Fire Druid, which I did play a couple times. So that is the early game package. Like I said, it looks like a Mono Fire list. As the game plays, it really progresses more into a mid-range strategy, where the Mono Fire aspects is just to control the board and not necessarily to rush your opponent down. We get into the higher mana curve here, 5 and 6, with our Hounds of Andoros, our Ascalon Phoenix, and our Infernal Legion. Hounds of Andoros is one of my favorite cards. It's just so hard to deal with. It also helps against infiltrate and stealth units. It combos really well with Whirling Blades, as you can Whirling Blades from the Void or Whirling Blades from the subsurface. If your opponent has a Drums of Doom in play, for instance, you can put the Hounds of Andoros in the subsurface, creep it on over there, and then Whirling Blades up to the surface. Also, on the note of sticky minions, Infernal Legion is kind of a secretly sticky minion, with Infiltrate being so popular. He's a really hard target to infiltrate. If there's any unit nearby at the end of the turn they infiltrate it, it will splash, deal 3 damage, and you will regain control of it. So ironically, it's also sticky and hard to deal with. Ascalon Phoenix is, again, just a counter fire meta card. I was really hot on the Panorama Manticore for a long time, but because of the prominence of Hot Springs and Mono Fire, I decided to go with the Phoenix, and it was really, really, really good. So hard to deal with. Because I'm running Hounds, if they infiltrate it, I can get it back, as opposed to in the Mono Fire list and in Hot Springs, there's no way to break the stealth or to disable it or anything to get your infiltrated unit back. So being in air really helped kind of mitigate the potency of some of the cards that are rising in popularity because of those other lists. And just to emphasize, I mean, the whole goal of the deck is to control the game in the early game with the fire, and then stick a big threat at the 5 or 6 mana mark. But eventually you'll start gassing. You're hoping to start gassing your opponents, but with the access to air and fire draw spells like Grandmaster Wizard and Morgana Le Fay, you can quickly refill your hand and continue to keep the momentum in your favor. Ironically, what happens, because you have access to so much draw with 2 Grandmaster Wizards, Morgana Le Fay, and Pact with the Devil, if you get to that 6 mana, you'll get to play your Grandmaster Wizard, and then you'll draw into your Morgana Le Fay, and then you'll see your Pact with the Devil, and so you'll just kind of keep filling your hand up, as they're, in Hot Springs, you're just getting 1 card a turn. But in the unique package, we've got Sir Lamorak as well. Sir Lamorak fits into that early fire, quell the aggression strategy, but it also enables a lot of 1-turn Death's Door with a Grimgris Arm, a grapple shot, and killing him is a lot of damage. And he's just been really, really impressive overall. We've also got Courtesan Thighs. Courtesan is becoming one of my favorite cards. I used to think it was just a way to end the game if they were on Death's Door, but as I've played this deck and learned the matchups more, I've really been able to identify when you can craft a Courtesan turn that is going to be more effective for you than detrimental for you. If your hand is, a vampire, and a phoenix, and that's it. And courtesan, you can really comfortably play that courtesan knowing that they're not going to hurt you too bad, but you get to waste their earthquake or waste their divine healing. Lastly, we've got the Ignis Rex. It's essentially a big phoenix with its fire protection, but also it has the ability to end the game. It's a ridiculous Whirling Blades target with its 6 power and being airborne. I was really more of a fan of the Air Dragon when it first came out. The damage potential is really high with that card, but this has more survivability and an immediate effect with even just a sight in hand. Being able to discard a desert to do a finishing blow is huge, and so I've been really a fan of it. And lastly, in my unique package, I've got Sir Agravain. Sir Agravain, when you look at this deck, you might assume I started with Sir Agravain because it's overpowered, and yes, it is overpowered, but ironically, I started with Water Sights and then worked Sir Agravain in as a kind of a side effect or a byproduct of running the Water Sights. After playing the Air Fire list, pivoting away from the Water Fire list, I noticed I was way more susceptible to earthquakes and berry effects. So after Moth and his Earth Fire Control Sorcerer became more popular, that deck was essentially an auto lose for me. So I added some Water Sights in to give me some safe landing spots for some of my bigger minions to at least try to get some use out of them. And then notice that, oh, hey, Sir Agravain is only 1 water threshold. Why not? Let's add Sir Agravain in and abuse the card with Tawny and with some of the lower end stuff. It kind of enables you to kill vampires easier because you have a Tawny in play, and then you just play Sir Agravain and get to strike the vampire for 4 with the Tawny, essentially, with the 3 from Agravain. So that's the minion package, and I was really impressed with it. I really liked how it bubbled out. There was only one game where I wasn't able to play Sir Agravain in a lot of my test games. But we'll move on to the magics now. So starting out on our magics, we've got Disenchant. This was a non-negotiable card for me. I played Hot Springs so much, and in that Water Fire package, you have no answers to auras, or essentially non-held artifacts are impossible for you to remove unless you have like Atlantean Fate, but that doesn't even help against monuments in a lot of cases. So having something in the deck to interact with somebody's early Jihad or Atlantean Fate or a really impactful monument like Chains was something that I really wished I had access to in the Water Fire list. So when I built this, I think Disenchant was one of the first cards I added in because I wanted a game plan where, you know, if I can stall the game and draw into it, I can deal with it, and I have a game plan and strategy to do it, as opposed to just seeing an early Jihad and knowing that their stuff was going to be bigger than my stuff for the entire game. So Disenchant won me a few games. I mean, the card is really, really good, even without the common sense. Finally, or additionally, in the magics, I've got Feast for Crows. Feast for Crows has been really good. It is more of a meta call, especially if you know your meta really well. Going into these really large tournaments, I don't know if I would take it unless I was really suspicious there would be a lot of Archimagos. But I think I cast it like once the entire weekend. I would pretty much mulligan it every time I saw it, unless I was against an Archimago. But you could take this card out. I'm running high on cards anyway. But now we get into our unit-based damage magics. So grapple shots. Grapple shots were really, really good. Obviously, flipping into Bruin and grapple shotting right away is impressive because it's just like 4 damage out of nowhere. But Whirling Blades was like kind of the MVP star of the deck, I would run 3 copies if I could more reasonably run 3 copies. The card is such a blowout card. Flipping into Bruin and then playing a Whirling Blades to deal 4 damage to 3 sites, the site he starts at and the 2 steps he takes was huge. And then, like I mentioned, Pact with the Devil to draw 3 more cards. Is broken with Tawny. I imagine every Fire Druid deck will run Pact with the Devil because it's just such a efficient draw that it's hard not to include. Finally, we've got Disintegrate and Infiltrate as some hard removal packages that Fire enables. Those Disintegrate particularly with how easy it is to cast from Tawny, and also get rid of if they have a unit holding a good artifact is big. It never really comes up. You're usually just doing it to their Phoenixes. Same with Infiltrate. You're usually just doing it to their big threat so you can turn the tide. But if I could run a second Infiltrate, I think I would, because it proved really effective with the auras, like I mentioned, and a lot of decks just don't have answers to it. We've got Minor Explosion. Minor Explosion was a card that I tested pretty heavily to try to take out. I've always loved the card, but I was really experimenting with Wildfire as an alternative. It's only 1 fire threshold, which really never really mattered, but the ability to essentially always get the value of a 2-for-1 where you get to kill their unit with Wildfire and then move the Wildfire to their avatar and get 3 damage, as though you got to Wildfire on top of their avatar or Minor Explosion on top of their avatar, was big. And then into Lava Flow. Lava Flow with Tawny is just so good. Hits the subsurface, kills Pudge Butchers if you're on top of them, kills vampires from 1 step away, is a quarter of their health if you're on top of their avatar, kills Bruin if you're 2 steps away, and the Bruin shares the site with the avatars. Now on to the Atlas, Inner Atlas. There are some interesting inclusions, I think, but a lot of standards. You see the full set of towers, just 1 of each tower, a beacon. If I could run a second beacon, I would. Very good into a Druid heavy meta with all the Tawnies floating around you. Basically, more copies of towers. We've got Funeral Pyres. If you're anticipating Archimagos, probably take Funeral Pyres. If I were going to Vegas, I don't think I would take Funeral Pyres. I would probably include some other sites. We've got 8 deserts. The fact that they are basics is huge, or ordinary, I should say, and they kill Tawny. That was their primary use, was Tawny killers. But also we have a good amount of basics or ordinary sites in the deck to begin with, to just continue to insulate against the Alania Fate, because it is really heavy to get into the fire. 3 fire for Morgana, 3 fire for Infernal Legion. I really wanted my fire mana base to be protected. So we've got our ruins just as more threshold fixing, and then our Corellian Upon Ask and our Color Out of Space. I know these are water sites, but with the earthquake and berry concerns, I was really considering actually taking these out, because earthquake specifically, being able to move them around, bury your things, and take you off of threshold and mana feels really bad. But we've also got our Oasis and our Lighthouse. But again, these sites, a lot of them were threshold fixing. I took out tech sites for these water sites because I felt the earthquake and bury effects were so strong that being able to stage a unit on these lighthouses and Oasis were really important, especially if you can, and we'll get to it in a second, put a updraft ridge in front of the lighthouse to now where you have a safe spot to stage your unit. With Valley of Delights, I took it out for a second because I just thought, oh, it's just like a threshold fixing card. But once I realized that I could, if I already had all of the thresholds I needed, I could play this as a water site and gain the same effect, because I'm not trying to build out any more threshold. I've got what I need for the game, and just throw out a water site so you can have a safe spot against earthquakes and things. It actually proved to be really good. I mean, outside of the fact that the card's already really good. But onto Updraft Ridge. Updraft Ridge, if I could fit a third in, I would. This would probably be the number one card I'd try to squeeze a third of into the deck. It's been such an impressive card in this list. It's so impressive with Tawny. If your Tawny dies and you resummon it with a Updraft Ridge, you now have the mobility to go pretty much across the entire map with Tawny and disintegrate if it makes it around the next round. But it works really well with Hounds of Honduros. You get to summon it to the subsurface and are able to surface and attack off of the site. So you can play your Hounds in a spot that can attack, but also protected in the subsurface. So that's been really cool. But this is what the Atlas comprises of, and it felt really, really good. You just mulligan deserts into deserts if you are going against an aggro list, but you get to ramp out some big things early with your towers and your beacon, and your threshold doesn't feel super, super greedy. So that is essentially the list and the breakdown. I'm happy to kind of dig more into it. If y'all have any questions, please leave it down in the comments, or if y'all want to see something similar. I anticipate I'm going to do a video essay basically on SCG-Con Houston, as well as the testing and prepping going into that, what my opponents were playing in my test group, and what shaped me to land on this deck ultimately. But I've really enjoyed doing this commentary. I hope to do some more in the near future, and keep playing, guys. I don't know.
I just completed. All right. Well, it starts off with Gen X controller, 3 of them. Staple in any deck, and yep, that's really it. Yeah, I'm a pretty big nerd. Deck and you'd like to duel, I think it's time to duel. Okay, well, hope you enjoyed.